Hi, welcome back to part two of my vlog, as nobody my age should ever refer to it as. I did actually call this, by the way, it was called Not a Pretty Bass, and I had a little intro slide which looked really cool. But Facebook, for reasons unknown, decided not to promote it with that intro slide. Instead, they used a picture of me holding a bass going. But yeah, it seemed to draw people in. I was really humbled by the reaction to the video. I guess it's a tribute to how bored you all must be during lockdown. You're happy to sit and listen to some old bloke waffling on about a load of bass guitars that you're probably not really interested in, but hey, it makes me happy. So I'm going to dive right in with a bit of a wild card bass, a midlife crisis in action. You ready for this? So this is dun, 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 my Corona Flying V bass guitar. I had a ebony Flying V bass, had really weak pickups. Back in around 2004, maybe 2005, I think it lasted one rehearsal and I sold it on. It was, not for me, but I always thought, Flying V, if you're going to have a V, it needs to have that Corona, very topical, Corona finish. So I saw this, snapped it up. It's a 30.5-inch scale rather than a 34 standard inch scale. So you've just got to be careful when you're coming down that you're on the note rather than just kind of not quite on it. The quick answer to that really is just practice more. But it's such a difficult bass. You can't sit and practice because you can't sit down, it slides around. So you can only really kind of rock out full tilt with it. But it's it's a nice bass. It's certainly a lot of fun. I don't think I'd ever get rid of it. There you go, a Joseph Lucky Scott riff on a Flying V. You got it all here. You wouldn't hear that anywhere else, would you? So, but yeah, it's a Joseph Lucky Scott riff played probably too fast actually, but never mind. So this is the Flying V. Just one fun story about it, if I may. My background, I guess, comes from a mixture of punk rock music and glam. I spent probably just over 15 years on the UK Americana scene. 10 years of that was with band Case Harding, and of all the bands to play this with, I actually did the I think final rehearsal and final concert with Case Harding playing on this bass. Which, as I say that out loud, is suddenly making me realise perhaps this bass is the reason why that band is no more. I don't know, but yeah. So that's my Corona Flying V. As I said, midlife crisis in action. Big fan of modifying basses, as I'm sure many of you who play notice. So that leads me rather nicely onto my American Fender Jazz bass. One of the things I've got to say about this, by the way, I love the string through body thing that some of the American basses do. Not all of them do. I think it's a great feature, I really do. Interesting thing as well, I always flip out the bridges these days. I used to be a bit of a traditionalist, but this is a badass 3 bridge. I didn't mention on yesterday's video, I've got the Omega bridge, which is basically a badass copy, or the modern copy of that. But you've got these beautiful white pickups. And look at that scratch plate. There's a guy in Canada made that for me. I do like a maple neck on a Fender, I have to say, which is probably the same as my my Precision. I say probably the same. It is the same. I don't know why I said probably. But yeah, just a great bass. I put flat wound strings on jazz basses. I find they're quite weak and trebly, but there's a real kind of 60s vibe, isn't it? If you've got the flats on the jazz, it sounds just quite sexy. And a funny story, we played in Wolverhampton at the steel mill, KK Steel Mill, with Wild Hearts. And, there's like a bill of rock bands, and all the bass players have just got their distortion on the bass. And, we come to sound check, and of course I've just got my flat wounds. And the sound man for ages couldn't work out why the bass sounded the way it was. And he was fiddling around and us playing for ages and ages and ages. And I just don't think they were used to, in 2019, having flat wounds on the jazz bass. It's very much a 60s thing. But yeah, I think this is a great bass. I did the final Case Harding tour on this, where we had the fantastic Neil Scully in the band, who I'm delighted we've got in Dissidents with Rich and the boys. And also I've done, as I said, a ton of shows with Dreamers with this particular bass. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a great instrument. Talking of fun, I'd now like to show you the dangers of drunken purchases on the internet. So I bought this, I don't know, about 3 years ago maybe, something like that. This is my ukulele bass. So kind of low end George Formby really, but yeah, it sounds quite sweet. It's got rubber strings. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I think it's probably not something you'd want your mates to catch you on. I've certainly never taken it out live or to a rehearsal. Funny thing is, I nearly recorded, because I think it has a kind of upright type vibe to it. I nearly recorded the Jimmy Six's EP on this, but in the end I bottled it and I just used a proper bass rather than this little toy. So that's that. And best till last. Now, I grew up near Swindon, and in the 80s, back in the day when we started, the dream, I suppose, was a Gibson Thunderbird. Presenting my proper Gibson Thunderbird, and these are just the best basses. I mean, listen to that bass. Just amazing. It's the low end on these is just huge. You've got that classic sort of 50s, 60s automobile vibe to the design. Just gorgeous. I used this at the O2 when we played there in London a few years ago. I used it a lot in the Creedence Clearwater Revival tribute that I do, although of course Stu Cook never played a Thunderbird, but hey, you know, I don't think we're purists in that sense. So nearly used it in Dreamers. I just settled on the Hofner in the end, but never say never, it may well come out. I just think this is an iconic bass, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful instrument. So believe it or not, that's all the bass guitars that I have in regular circulation. I've got a couple more upstairs that I'm being very lazy in terms of not selling, but that essentially is my collection. If your life is so dull at the moment that you're sitting through entire videos of me talking about my basses, then yeah, peace and love to you from me, and thanks very much for watching. Cheers.